Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com, and we're very glad to have you here this afternoon. We are going to be proceeding the program called Satura's Black History Corner today. They're here every second and fourth Mondays, and they will be here with another treat, another edition of their program that starts at 3:30. Hope you're still around for that program. We come on from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Then we have a chat session from 3 to about 3:30, and then they come on and they present their program. We are delighted to have you with us, and we hope you stay tuned for the next hour. And we're going to be talking about maybe two topics today, one of which, of course, would be a continuation of what we've been discussing now for a number of weeks. And we're going to stay on, we're going to stay on as long as they do. You know, this is the situation with this nonsense about the election was in fact interfered with by the Russians. You know, we're not going to quit until they quit.
You know, I'd like to know this. I keep on asking this, and no leftist can tell me this. They're so horrified that the Russians influenced the election. For 50, 60 years, it's always been the Democrat socialists telling us it's all hyped up. We have nothing to fear Russia there. That is not as bad as we've been taught by, again, the media and the government, which they are members of. They always had no issue with Russia, but now it's, oh my God, we can't be influenced by them. Hillary Clinton selling the uranium ore to Russians is totally inconsequential, totally not even mentioned. As a matter of fact, I talked to leftists, and they're screaming at me that it didn't happen. That was only from Fox News coverage.
Yeah.
It's established fact, okay, that she did this, but they have no issue with that. They think that he's been bought and sold. The only thing I'm aware that he's got from his from the East, you know, those Eastern governments, those former bloc countries, is his wives. Okay, and let's face it, they're pretty good. They're pretty good models. No.
Yeah.
So I can't buy him. I can't blame him. It's good quality. You know, but other than that, I just don't. I don't understand. They're this hatred towards the left. Always loved Russia. We're we're demonizing them.
John, that's the thing that really gets you. When did the left ever start being a defender of liberty in this country against the Russians, the leftists, and then give me a break. And now they are the ones who are protecting the country. The Republicans are now the ones that the communists are now siding with, and the left is now defending the country against the communists. What's wrong with that picture except everything?
You know, I had a guy yelling at me the other day. He said, "There's proof. There's proof. They've proven that the Russians hacked into the system." I said, "Well, there's two things you're going on here. The Russians could have hacked in, and I suspect every foreign country, when they know there's a vulnerability through cyber ways, they can get in there and infect something. They're going to take that. So I mean, I have no. I'm not that I'm not a loyalist to Russians, but or the Soviets or anybody else. I'm not a communist. Never have. Never will be. Never will be. Anyway, But the thing is, there's two separate issues. To prove that there's collusion and to derive some benefit from on Trump's behalf is still sorely lacking. After all those 3 hours of testimony, they point blank asked Comey if there was any proof. No. So okay. So why can't? Okay, we're supposed to let things drop when we're talking about Obama's birth certificate. Oh wow, they came up with a birth certificate after 3 years he was in office. They finally came up with one. Mm-hmm. Okay, he had a passport. What did he lose that? I mean, did he travel? I know where my documents are, my birth certificate and all that is. I got it locked down at a place at my house. Mm-hmm. This man's got mansions he lives in and stuff. He doesn't have a secure place to put his documents. Why couldn't he presented that sooner? Mm-hmm. That way he could have knocked off any opposition immediately, but he didn't. He actually, they allowed that to fester, and they came forward to something, and everybody should be satisfied with that. Why can't they be satisfied with the actions?
I don't think their jury is out of the jury room on that question, and I don't raise it publicly, but at the same time, I need more information. I'm not so sure we've satisfied the issue and have an answer to that question.
If you go to Secretary of State's office, well, you have to have birth certificate or something like that to get your initial driver's license. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have to have that. He was driving around, I guess, in Chicago, in Illinois somewhere, mm-hmm. and he also had a passport. But the only thing I have heard, now I don't know if this is totally substantial, but the rumors I had heard that the Social Security number he had was not from a state that he had stated he lived in, not from Hawaii, because within a certain range, the prefixes are actually are given to a certain state. Mm-hmm. They could tell from that with those prefixes what state they're issued from. he didn't live in Connecticut. And that's allegedly
Yeah,
where his current
I'm aware of all
number
that.
is from. So why is that shined on? Nobody even oh, you're paranoid. You're just a weirdo when you ask that.
Yeah, I think we need some answers here, and we deserve to have all issues that are related to our way of life in this country. We have to have those questions answered, and this name calling that goes on when you raise these questions is a way of refuting the idea that we ought to have these answers. We deserve to know who our elected officials are, and whether or not they are qualified to fulfill the mission that this country has assigned to them by the creation of these posts. And none of them, quite frankly, are serving in the capacity and the way in which it was intended. And that includes all the members of the Congress and now the members of the Supreme Court. I was listening on the way to the studio. Gentlemen, need some tissue when we get a chance, because I'm having, I have hay fever.
Yeah.
And every time I come in here thinking I'm taking care of the situation, I run into some, looks pretty good in here though. None of the camera people seem to be having a problem. None of the light technicians are having a problem. Just me, I'm the ones in here suffering. And so anyway, we need to know who these people are. They're doing a bad enough job with them being qualified for these posts, and we know that they meet the constitutional smell test. That is the qualifications they have to run for the office.
I said I didn't think that was such conspiracy-minded. I mean, they brought that up.
It's not conspiracy. It's a question that's raised about the propriety of the ones who are running for office in this country based upon the constitutional litmus test.
It was like, well, John McCain, he said that he was not qualified to run for president because he was born in the Panama Zone, because his dad was in the military. But see, from military establishments, for practical purposes, intents and purposes, is considered to be American soil, U.S. soil. So is embassies and all those kind of consulates, as well as his parents were. So there's two principles of there's jus sanguinis, which means for your bloodline, for principle of citizenship, as well as jus soli, born on the soil of.
Right.
He fulfilled both. If he was born at a military base or the U.S. Army or U.S. Navy or whatever his dad was, Navy, I think it was Navy. If they were on a base, which is U.S. soil, and his parents were American citizens on U.S. soil for legal purposes, he was qualified. As much as I have a hatred for McCain, I think he's a total slimeball. But
I'm going to challenge that one premise, the one of how do you pronounce it, John? Jus
sanguinis and jus soli.
Yeah, the Latin phrase, which means by blood. And the other one, I do accept jus soli, which is by soil. I think it's a misreading. I think that what persons did was come behind the framers and tried to impose what they meant, and they got it all wrong. They didn't mean by bloodline. Give me a break. Give me a break. What do we have in this country? We have, John, if it's a bloodline, what do we have? In an aristocracy? It would have to be an aristocracy, wouldn't it?
Well, let's face it. Michigan certainly is an example
bloodline.
Of politically, we got a bloodline, political bloodline. Yeah, we got the Dingles and the Kildies, so
See, that's what I'm arguing when I get with these so-called scholars, and they're scholars, but they're not supreme scholars. I mean, I sit down and talk to these people, and I don't feel like I'm taking any notes in here. I mean, it's just not going to be any note taking, because I don't think they have enough information to give notes.
Well, I know that a lot of times you bring your pocket book, kind of booklet. It's got the Constitution and the Bill of Rights in it, and I think it's a lot of times it's like unneeded, because you basically, every time I see you in conversation, you can actually quote a chapter and verse or section and clause.
I know enough to know there that many of these guys are lying, and I will call some of their names out, like Larry Lessig. You up here lying about the Federalist Papers. I read all 85 of the Federalist Papers, and I think I understand them pretty well. And for him to come up there talking that nonsense.
Another thing is,
I'm a professor. You get out of here with that nonsense.
One thing this left, the people here always are so enamored with foreign ideas. And the thing is, our founders found them rather repellent, because those foreign conceptions and those allies from other countries were something they fought against, including the New World Order. Everybody saw, oh my God, the New World Order, George Bush and all that. The New World Order, when this country founded, was found, in my opinion, it was like breaking away from kings and aristocracy to more the common person having more of a say. I don't find that so horrifying, being from a common group of people.
Yeah, it just means that we're doing something different, and it is creating a new circumstance in the world, and it's just like the world is like a spider web. You change any part, you shake any part of it, the entire web shakes. So there's a new world order in the sense that something has changed in the world, and it has a rolling effect on everything else in the world. It's not just in a cubbyhole somewhere things are occurring. It has a ripple effect. And so there's a new world order all the time taking place. There's a new world order right now because people that are on the planet today are breathing now. They weren't breathing the day before. Some people got born yesterday, and that's a new world order. I mean, people make things so complicated and want to see, there's a conspiracy everywhere, and there are these people around here with all this magnificent understanding and power. They can just simply will things into being, and it's going to be that because they will it into existence, and all this nonsense. That's not the way it operates. But this idea of just sanguinis by blood, as opposed to just solely, I think that what they're missing, I don't have to think about it, I know what they're missing, is that they do not understand the thematic aspects, the thematic aspects of the Constitution. They do not see it as a whole that's integrated by the different parts of it. See, the Constitution is a holistic document. But what they're not getting, I'm going to help them get it though. I'm going to help this Harvard professor, this lying Larry Lessig. Give me a break. These liars go talk about the 46, I think it was, either the 46 or 48. I think it was the 46 Federalist paper. The one written by, one of the 51 Federalist papers written by Alexander Hamilton. I guess because Hamilton, they had to play on Hamilton on Broadway, right? So they want to import everything now to Hamilton, as if Hamilton, and I'm not taking anything from Hamilton. Hamilton was a very smart man, probably was the smartest man of his time, living in the United States. So I don't take anything away from him. The man was in many ways a genius. But for them to take Hamilton and say that Hamilton had written the 46 or the 48th, I forget which one it was, but I know both of them. I know Hamilton was not writing it for what Larry Lessig was talking about. Larry Lessig, you were lying. Talking about the Federalist paper that was written by Hamilton was written in order to prevent someone like Donald Trump from assuming the presidency if, in fact, he escaped the first round of the voting process, which was in the popular vote, and then if we somehow didn't get it right, there was the check and balance system built into the electoral process, which was a check and balance upon the voters. You give me a break. These people are talking this madness. And so the Electoral College was opposed to then, if Trump happened to seep through the system, then the Electoral College was there to in fact stop him because he got by the voters. We weren't discerning enough, and therefore the Electoral College was not supposed to endorse the will of the voters, but in fact overturn the verdict of the voters and vote elsewhere. So then, as it would stand today, 538 electors, take this logic now, 538 electors, according to Larry Lessig, are now insured with the responsibility of overturning the verdict, in this case here, of 62 million voters. Nobody but a fascist would even say that. This man has to be a fascist. Yeah,
they basically say, none of you don't know what you're talking about. We're going to take this from you. Well, guess what?
I wish you'd tell me that to my face.
If you did a profile of the people who actually voted for Trump, you're going to find they're probably better informed, and probably, if you want to know the truth about it, they're the ones footing the bill for a lot of other people. So guess what? They're getting tired of being enslaved, okay? And they're fighting back as way they could. Legally, if you can, the collusion of the voters not voting for the candidate of the choice on the left. Yeah, okay, that's a real horrible conspiracy to be part of. You not want to be part and parcel of the same situation.
Yeah.
I mean, to offer up Hillary Clinton, Oh, come on, my God. Like that Joe Pye, the guy who was an extreme leftist from England. I mean, he even screamed about it right after. Come on, the reason why you got this result is because you offered up Hillary Clinton. For
Give me a break.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, you got her running when the voters said no, and they've been saying no to Democrats for the last 8 years, from 2009 until 2016. We took everything. The voters of this country, don't know if you noticed this or not, you might have gotten confused by the fact that they elected Obama on 2 occasions, but underneath Obama, every other position was being taken away from the Democrats. Maybe you didn't notice that.
Another thing is, why aren't they so? They're angry at the Trump voters, or Trumpsters, but why aren't they angry and use that hostility and stuff for a positive thing and address the corruption within the Democratic Party itself, which created the scenario for shutting out Bernie Sanders, who I think is a nut job. But let's face it, he probably could have if they got behind him, he'd be probably more of a decent candidate in some ways than Hillary Clinton ever was. Okay, so why don't they strive for reforming the Democratic Party, the party that basically tried to voice that used up piece of crap, Hillary, on the rest of us? Why? And they took it. Let's face it, they orchestrated events to screw the Sanders supporters and Sanders out of their limelight. And that's what they should have done.
Going from bad to really bad, and bad and really bad in both cases. Bernie Sanders is a communist, and Hillary Clinton is a corrupt communist who would take the label more so of a Solinskyite more than she would take any other label, but all that means the same thing, and it ends up in the same same political jurisdiction.
See, Hillary is not about, her ilk, in my opinion, are not Democrats, Republicans, socialists, or communists. What they are is basically in it for themselves. That's all they're for.
You're just defining politics there.
That's all they are about. I mean, they want to be worshipped and venerated.
Yeah.
From what their actions are, because they don't seem to hear the voice of the people, and especially Hillary just can't accept the voice of the people.
John, it's amazing to me that politicians have been able to disguise themselves and hide their voice in plain sight. And what they do is also in plain sight for all of these years, when politicians have been very consistent throughout the annals of history. They're not acting any differently now than they've acted throughout history, and they are what Ayn Rand talks about in a book called The New Intellectuals. They are, these politicians are the personification of Attila. They are men and now women of force, and just because they mask the force does not mean that they are not willing to use force if force is in fact necessary for them to maintain power. They hope it doesn't come to that, because by them having to manifest their power through the instrumentality of force exposes them as Attila, and they don't want that exposure, because ultimately, if they expose, they're more of the people that Attila is in fact ruling than it is of Attila, and then that puts them in harm's way. So they would much rather rule by the masking that goes on, where you don't see that these people are wolves in sheep's clothing. I mean, in business suits. Give me a break. So, I mean, it's just that we've got to pay attention, because it's not that they are actually hiding a lot from the discerning onlookers. It's just that we're not looking askance of what it is we're looking for. But if you go back in history and then start there and then come up into the present time and then use the past and then place it into the corporality of the contemporary times, then you'll see who these people are. They have not changed. The masking may be different, but in terms of what they stand for their own political power. And they do that which is necessary to bring that result about. They're not actually representing anybody. The federal government, those in the federal government, are representing the federal government. And where is there any reason to believe that they are representing the American people? Where is that? In what part of Washington do I go and find that storyline where they are representing the American people? They are representing their body. They're representing the ones inside that body, and representing the ones who are inside the national capital, and that's where the representation starts, and that's where it stops. And that's why a lot of what is happening with Trump is taking place. He's an outsider going there trying to do something different than what's been done before he got there. He talks about draining the swamp. Well, what does that mean? You drain that swamp, and everybody in Washington got to get out. But I want to return to what I'm saying about this this Latin phrase of Jos Sanguinis, because if they thought, those persons have imported this understanding into the Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, it says that the person eligible to be President of the United States, you must, in order to have these particular standards, and then they must be a natural born citizen of the United States. And I contend, and these scholars are not going to say anything behind this. They talk to the layman. You can't say that stuff in front of anybody that has read the documents, understand just as well as they do, and probably better than most. And they're not going to say this. They say this stuff behind my. They say this stuff to my face. You guys out there lying to the American people, Larry Lessig, you are ridiculous. You are ridiculous. Lying on Hamilton. He can't defend himself, so I'll stand in his defense. That is not what Hamilton wrote in that Federalist paper. That's not what he wrote. And if they had understood the thematic aspects of the Constitution, and nobody's ever talked about the thematic aspects of the Constitution, but what I mean by that is that the Constitution has a theme. You see, a theme. A theme paper is that it has. If you write a paper for like for your doctorate degree, you're writing a manuscript, then it has a beginning, a middle, and an ending, but it's thematic in terms of all of it has to be connected. If you don't have that end result connected up to the body of the paper, which is connected up to the introductory comments of the paper, you're not getting any credit for it. They'll turn you out until you get out of there, because it's not thematically coherent. It has to be a thematic, reading of it, because it has to all be connected together. The Constitution is written that way. So what the scholars have missed is the attempt to amend the Constitution, not through the amendment process, but to amend it through the lack of understanding of the themes that then nullify this extension of what the Constitution is saying. It doesn't say anything about bloodline.
Well, let me interject here.
And I'm going to prove that in just a minute.
Let me interject here. For you Marxist readers, he's what he's called. He's referring to as, you guys who use the term contextualize. Okay, he's contextualizing this for you.
Contextualize. Yeah, put it in context. And let's put this in context in this case here. Let me show you the thematic aspects. So you may not be. See, people say things like this right here. They'll say, "Well, the Constitution doesn't mention what is meant by natural-born citizen." Well, okay, not explicitly so. But I'll tell you this: when I go back and read the Naturalization Act of 1790, a lot of you're pointing to that, and you say, okay, here's what they wrote in the Naturalization Act of 1790, where they were saying that what they meant was by natural born was also by birth. What they were really trying to do was come behind themselves to amend the Constitution, because they recognized that there had been something left out of it, and they're going to try to act like this was the intention of it. That was not the intention of it. And what they did in the amendment of the Naturalization Act of 1790, go look at what they did in 1795, where they took that nonsense out of there. In other words, they didn't contend in 1795 what they contended in 1790 in the Naturalization Act. And I'll tell you why they took it out of there. Because they recognized that they could not get away with that contradiction. You see, it's one thing for the framers to be theoreticians. It's another thing for them to be practitioners of government. I respect them highly as theoreticians. But when they became the politicians to practice that which was in fact theoretically written. They had the same flaws any other politicians would have.
Yeah, look at Jefferson. He started violating the old principles he laid down himself.
Look at what happened in terms of him annexing against the Constitution the Louisiana Purchase in 1803.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I know, John, because you know history.
Because I mean, let's face it. It went off the rails as soon, and we're not saying we should go back to the idea just because it went off the rails, and the people who were supposed to put us on the whole system went and screwed up. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try to keep it within the same boundaries they originally tried.
I agree with you 1,000%, and I'll tell you, going off the rails. Look at John Adams. John Adams is one of the 5 persons. I know he's a signature of the Declaration of Independence, but this man was the one that was on that committee of 5 that was in fact authorized to be one of the writers. And first of all, he's the one that authorized to be the writer of the Declaration of Independence. But because he was not as good a writer as Thomas Jefferson and wasn't as great of a theoretician as Thomas Jefferson, they told Adams handed the pen over to the more erudite and the more intellectually gifted and better read Thomas Jefferson. He ended up writing the document, but on the committee of 5 persons, of which Jefferson was one and Adams was one, John Adams was one of the 5 that was on that committee. But look what he did. How many years? 12 years. Let me get this right. 1798, 1776. So 22 years. 22 years. Two decades. 1 years ago. 2 years later, to use Lincoln's words. 2 years later, there is John Adams, who had been a signatory to the Declaration of Independence, up here signing into law the Alien and Sedition Act. See, it's one thing to admire the framers for their theoretical understandings and their tremendous writing of a document, one in which the world had never seen, one that was bringing about restricted government. Who would ever heard of a president of a country before? I mean, I know people talk about George Washington was the first president of the United States. Give me a break. George Washington was the first president in the history of the world. There had not ever been any presidents of a country before George Washington. That's what the Haitian, the house servant, the coachman in Haiti, Toussaint the Overture, was saying when they had the revolution in Haiti, that was in fact mimicking the revolution that occurred in France in 1789, which is mimicking the Constitution. That was mimicking the revolution in the United States that had happened 13 years earlier in 1776. That's what these tumbling effects of history. You see, it was a new world order. It was over here, but it affected over there, and then over there affected over here again. Isn't that true? That's a new world order.
Isn't it kind of where the French, king, wanted to help the American patriots start this country because he wanted to basically, tug the beard of or whatever, or tweak George III in England. That turns around after it's established, the use of the impetus, the creation of the United States, as a way of killing him, his line lineage off. The king. So I mean, basically, the Marxist doctrine would say he was elements of the seeds for its own destruction. Him backing this just so to benefit from it later on kind of bit him in the butt. Bit him in the butt.
John, I wrote a Facebook post today. I hope person that listen to this program will read it. I know they're gonna get mad at me because some of the points we're making in the studio are some of the comments I made on this post. I know they're not gonna like it, but that's why I wrote it, and I knew they were not gonna like it, but I dared them to try to answer it. That's when the fat hits the fire, and when the rubber meets the road, and then we're gonna kick it for a while. That's when because that's when Houston is going to have a problem outside of Houston. Because I know these scholars are going to do all they can to say that behind the backs of those who are reading what they've read and have a different view of it, and one that they cannot impeach. And if they think they can impeach this, they need to come forward with it. Because I'm in public. I'm not behind any walls. And I dare Larry Lessig. I know he's at Harvard University. I dare this joker, this lying joker, get on there talking that nonsense about the Electoral College as opposed to suborn the will of the people in the popular vote, and that the popular vote is to be a part of the check and balance system in terms of Electoral College, and the Electoral College is to check upon the popular vote. Give me a break. What person can say stuff like that? You have to be a tyrant to say that. These people are hidden despots to write that. But let me pour some water on the parade of those that want to read into what is a soil issue and they want to turn it into a blood issue. You know, I said earlier now that the reason why they make that mistake is because they do not understand, and nobody's ever said before. Mark Levine hasn't said. I have a lot of respect for Mark Levine. I don't always agree with Mark Levine's understanding of things. I know he's a constitutional scholar. But Mark Levine sometimes gets in there and starts becoming a partisan.
See, Mark Levine is a neocon, in my opinion.
Yeah. Not as much as some of the others, but he is a neocon. Look at some of the things this guy did around the candidacy of Ted Cruz. I like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is not eligible to be president of the United States. Give me a break. You were talking about Obama. Was he born in the country, out of the country? And there's Ted Cruz, who everybody knows was born in Canada.
I have a question here. I'm going to jump in here. Somebody posted this the other day, and I wonder what your response, because I know what mine is. What if someone told you the founders' intent when they created the USA was to sow the seeds of world democracy? What do you think of that?
So the seeds of world democracy, they were trying to make the experiment here work.
See, that's what I think, because I was going to interject with that when put into the in response to that. That was a Wilsonian, Woodrow Wilson concept of making this world safe for democracy. And let's face it, if you look at the other things that came along with that bundle of Woodrow Wilson, and my last name was Wilson, so I hope to. I am probably related. I don't know. I don't like him. I don't like his politics, which I didn't even like my own grandfather's politics. Mm-hmm. So that's not basically something I really have issue with. But anyway, it wasn't that exporting democracy, if you will allow that term. It was not inherent. I mean, it wasn't. It was
not the idea.
Now, see, this is all tied to the strain from people's perception even of what the founders was intending.
Yeah. John, the world didn't even know what they were doing, because they had never seen this before. I was mentioning, I got off that before I finished up that one point. I was saying that to Sonny Overture, who was the house servant, the coachman. He was right. He was the one that was a house servant, but his role was to be a coachman. And many people think that he's the one that started and initiated the revolution in Haiti. That's not true. He joined onto it after it had been started by those who were out there in the field. The ones that started the revolution were Boukman, Bielsa, and John Francois. Once the revolution had gotten underway, then Toussaint Louverture, who was better trained, came in, and then it was the mantle of leadership fell upon him because he was better trained than those others were, because he was more of inside of the house and had learned some things by being closer to those who were more learned in the society, picked up some of their learnedness, and was able to apply that to the uprising he had in Haiti. But his downfall was that he was set upon by Napoleon, who he was fighting against, by the way, and he could not understand the experiment in the United States. And he said about that experiment, he said, the world, listen to this very carefully, the world has always obeyed kings. See, John, he couldn't understand the presidency. The world has always obeyed kings because it never had a president before. And because of his belief in Napoleon, king, Napoleon told him, why don't you come over to France, let's talk about it. And then before you knew it, they found him in a dungeon.
You're struck up on something. Now I hope you can retain your what you're going on, but I just have to.
I know where I am.
But You know, you're just struck on a point where I think the Democrats have more, or the socialists have more of a connection, because basically what they do is they become a king-like quality. Marx would talk about the cult of personality. They basically, people have this person, these figures to rally around. And it's basically what the socialists, the leftists, the progressives tap into is this human propensity towards gathering around a king and submitting to that.
Yeah.
That's reason maybe they tapped into the psyche more.
Yeah.
See where the Republican form or the conservative or the libertarian, basically, it's a very terrifying prospect. You actually have to take a
John, I know what you're saying there. And I went into a dimension of that in my post today. It's a two-part post. And I went somewhere that nobody's ever gone before. I know that for a fact. And I know it's going to be very controversial. I'll let you read it. I'm going to tell you about it on there. That's a different conversation. It's not totally different from what we're talking about right now, but it's somewhat different. And you can go and read it so that I don't get too far off the track here. I do want to stay as focused as I can, because I want to make a couple of points before we go off the air. But this idea of the framers trying to internationalize and scope what they were doing, the internationalization of their scope was what they had borrowed from the world in order to put this package together. In other words, they were aware of some of the faux pas that had been created in governments in the past. These people were learned. These were scholars who had studied other governments, and then what they saw was every last one of them, Rome, the Greek experiment, they had all collapsed. And then you had to do what C.F. Vonnet, the French writer, who's writing in the 18th century, in his book called The Ruins, that's my southern accent, R-U-I-N-S, The Ruins of Empire, written by Constantine Francis Vonnet. And in the first chapter, I think it is of that book, Vonnet imagines in this book that he's going to these sites where these ruins of empires are, and he's examining these ruins. He's going to ask these ruins to testify about what happened, because you were great, and then what brought you to your end. And he's there interrogating those ruins through what he calls the genius. Now, everybody that has talked about this book has never talked about who that genius is in that conversation. So I'll tell you who it is. This is free. The genius is Count Vonnet's alter ego. You know, you can have a conversation with yourself. And sometimes the conversation is that your lower self, that with a lesser understanding, is appealing to the higher self for a better expression of what the realities are, because the higher self can be interrogated to bring about a greater understanding. That's a community of self type of discussion. So he says in that book, "Oh genius, what do these ruins mean?" And the genius is responding by looking at these ruins and trying to import what happened to these great civilizations. The Assyrians. Let me try to name them in order here. The Egyptians in 3200 BC. Then I don't know if you say the Hyksos was an empire. They tried to establish an empire around in the 13th dynasty of Egypt, which would be around 1600 something, I would say. You get different dates on it, but I know it's in the 13th dynasty of Egypt. And then after the Hyksos, you have the Assyrians in 663, and then the Persians in 525, and the Greeks in 333 under Alexander, and then the Romans in a much later period. The Romans are coming into history until I'm going to say here 274 for the Romans coming into history. Not that that's when the empire is built. The empire is not until Julius Caesar in that time period. But the point I'm making is that the world was brought into the Constitution not at the end of the process when they're now trying to give it to the world. They had brought the world into the writing of the Constitution. That's what I'm saying. That they had studied world civilizations, world history, and they had interrogated, just like Volney had interrogated the Runs, they had interrogated what happened to all these great prior civilizations. And what they found out was what brought them to their end was Attila. That's what brought them to their end. And Ayn Rand is writing something like that, not on the same point, but writing something about that as well, in terms of her findings in the new intellectuals, where she's talking about the two influences in society, one of them being Attila, the man of force, and then she talks about the witch doctor, the man of superstition, and they're two ganging up on the rest of the people, and one keeping them down because of force, and one keeping them down because they are being bogged down with superstition and being cowered by forces that they couldn't understand in nature. They thought that there was some heebie-jeebie stuff going on, and they were able to rule over them by superstition and give them this superstition out here with these shaking these rattles and stuff. You know, these witch doctor kind of folks. So the international aspects of the Constitution is not in the aftermath of the Constitution when they're trying to give this document to the world. What they did was bring the world into the writing of the document. Can you scholars understand that? These people were sitting there, and Ayn Rand makes this point also, that these were the first, the country's first intellectuals. And Rand, who died in 1982, said at the point of her death, was still saying in 1982 when she died, you know, she was born in 1905. So she was what, 77? And she said that they are the country's first intellectuals, and so far is last intellectuals. I know Larry Lesson's not going to like that. That's too much information. Because they're going to imagine themselves to be intellectual. They're scholars. They're not intellectual. They're scholars. They're not creating any new information. They have they studied and regurgitated and memorized the information that went before them, and they're able to regurgitate it better than those who have not been the readers and writers of books. They read some books and written some books. In that sense, they are scholars, but they're not creating any new knowledge. And they're not very good experts on the old knowledge in terms of their understanding of it. They may think that they are, but they're not. And for Larry Lesson, for you to be saying the stuff that you that you said in 2016, that's a travesty. That's an insult to people's intelligence. But they weren't able to catch you at it because they have not read the books you read, but you're dishonest. You better not. I wish you get on my post and say the stuff that you said. I'm gonna set you. I'm gonna help educate you. I'm gonna help educate you. I tried to put this off, but I wasn't able to do it. The allergy is just too strong. And anyway, I think I got the most of the problem resolved until the program is over. Sorry about that. Don't like to do that in front of the camera. But we're here every Monday, and we come here rain, shine, sleet, snow, hot weather, cold weather, global warming, global cooling, whatever the latest lies are.
The only time I think you like to take time, you'll have to take time is for your own funeral. No. Yeah, so I hope that's 50 years in the future.
Yeah,
but anyway.
John, these scholars are something else. It's something when you really look at what they're saying. I'm not in their classrooms. And when I was in their classrooms, I challenged everything they were saying up there.
You know, it's like, okay, these leftists attack me on Facebook because I just had a recent one where I posted something, kind of a meme.
They're not qualified to challenge you.
They attacked me, and they were saying, well, I say wrong things about, because I said that Sanders never worked. that was the press. Actually, the mainstream press never covered his employment history, and he was kicked out of a hippie commune because he didn't carry his weight.
Yeah,
he just sat around babbling about politics too much. And another thing is, most of these people who are like that, like him, never worked for a day in their life, or were very marginally employed, and now they take it upon themselves, like all leftists seem, like Marx and all the other ones, try to speak for the working class. They've never been part of the working class. So I mean, I think that's really kind of, to me, that's a sheer amount of arrogance. Like, well, we're speaking because they don't know the situation. I think people know what they're up against.
Yeah.
Okay? I think that's just arrogance.
It is arrogance, and they are really following in the footsteps of the arrogance of Karl Marx. They have read Karl Marx's comments about the working class. He did say that the working class would rise up, but he then stated that they would not have the wherewithal, the mental wherewithal, to be in the vanguard of the uprising. It would have to be from the other class, which by joining in with them would in essence be committing class suicide. In other words, some people out of the proletariat, some people above the proletariat, the bourgeoisie, that the proletariat would be fighting against, someone in the bourgeoisie would in fact side with them, doing the summa bona, the greatest good for the greatest number, by coming out of that class and joining in with the proletariat that is oppressed, so as to affect the outcome, given the mental acumen they would bring to it, that was not among those who are in the proletariat. So Karl Marx had a lot of respect, certainly, for the proletariat, didn't he? Nonsense. This man was putting the proletariat down.
Well, see, if you look, when I was in college, I had to take a class of sociological statements. One of the books I read about Karl Marx was written by a guy named Isaiah Berlin. Mm-hmm. And Isaiah Berlin was more like he was more current in the time. Like,
is it Isaiah Berlin?
Isaiah,
okay.
Isaiah Berlin, and he was actually more of a sympathizer to the New Deal and all that stuff. But he depicted it accurately from all the historical evidence he had given to him, and he was not shy about covering it. Marx was a total jerk in every level, we'd call. Because the feminists embraced the Marxist doctrine because they think that's a way of liberating women. But Marx himself, the reason why he chose a woman he was with, because her family was more affluent, he cheated on her constantly. He had affair after affair with her.
Yeah.
He used to have sex with their maid. He impregnated women. And he didn't want to take responsibility.
That's true.
He let his children starve to death.
The real Karl Marx.
Yeah, he let his children starve to death rather than seek real employment. He actually let them starve to death.
Yeah.
They put him in very seriously impoverished conditions. He was not a nice guy. He was not a nice person, and he didn't. And a lot of his stuff, his accusations and stuff, or should have been, is probably a form of projection.
One of the best exposés on Karl Marx is the one put out by the Canadian philosopher Stefan Malano, who I have a lot of respect for. Very honest person. I can listen to people like him because I know that he is an honest broker, and he tries to get it right, and for the most part, he does get it right because he is honest. And if you're honest and you bring your honesty and sincerity to the table, you pretty much will get it right, because just to look at the evidence and just simply be true to what the evidence is saying. You don't have to import a whole lot of bias and prejudices into it. You simply say, okay, here's what the facts are, and here's what the facts mean. Okay. This is not rocket science.
I see that video that we're on YouTube where Stefan talks about Marx, and from what I remember about that book by Isaiah Berlin, he drew heavily from that. So if you can find a copy of that.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I do have a copy if you ever want.
I would love to see that, because I like to see where there are these convergent instances where the two are the twain meets the twain meets in terms of what is being said and what's being said on the other side, and see what the commonalities are. But I have come across Malno's work called The Real Karl Marx. He's done a lot of those, by the way. The real, because so much lying goes on, you have to have somebody to come behind it and correct it. The real Karl Marx He has another one that's very brilliant, the real Martin Luther King. That's another one that's very brilliant.
The one I was found shocking, because I didn't know that much, was Mahatma Gandhi. And it was like, it was really detailed and stuff. The man was, I mean, there's some things to appreciate about him. I can appreciate about him, but as a human being, he had serious failings and failures, yes.
Yeah, and somebody need to go and get that tape. I want to keep on. I do want to finish up this one point, and then the other things I'll say maybe at the end of the program. I do want to finish up on this point, though, about the thematic aspects of the Constitution, because I think everybody that's been reading this document and quoting from it have missed this thematic aspect of the Constitution. That's why they don't understand Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 about just soli, natural born means by soil. And the reason why they want to bring in by blood, because they think that the issue is citizenship if your parents are citizens, and therefore they pass that citizenship down through their children, which if the parents are natural born citizens, and then automatically therefore the child is also natural born. Nonsense. That's the understanding everybody out there got. But you see, if you understand that the Constitution is thematic, then let's see what it says in maybe the other 6 parts of the 6 articles of the original Constitution. Let's just stay in Article 2 of the Constitution and go to Article 2, Section 4, where it says this, and I'm going to quote this, and this is what it says. Now shut up. Shh. like they do in the football field when they score a touchdown on the home team's court, and they were out there, yay, and cheering for the other team, the home team, and then they score a touchdown, and the guys that scored a touchdown tell the crowd, shh, rubbing it in, right? Well, okay, Larry, let's say do this right here. Larry, can you do this? In Article 2, Section 4, it says this: the president, the vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office upon impeachment for, and, there's that and conviction of, look at the first part here. This is the thematic thing I'm talking about, tying it into Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, about the part of the Constitution that deals with natural born. Listen very carefully. The first impeachment aspect, the first thing that a person can be impeached for and removed from office for, stated in the Constitution in Article 2, Section 4, is treason. You know why? You know why they put in their natural born now? You see the theme now? Based upon that, you constitutional scholars? Shut up. The thematic aspect of the Constitution is explained in this sense in Article 2, Section 4. Why? Because just soli, natural born, is that we do not want a person born elsewhere, because being born elsewhere raises a question of your allegiance. It's not a blood issue. It's a flag issue. You understand that? You bring that other stuff in here, talking about blood. Your parents can be having allegiance to the flag. You see I'm standing up and saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag. You don't want them pledging allegiance to another flag. Why? Because if you have dual allegiance, that means that you have the possibility there built into the psyche of the individual. You have built into the psyche of the individual treason. And the first thing they put in Article 2, Section 4 is a person can be removed from office upon conviction of, first of all, impeachment for, the accusation in the House, and conviction of in the Senate, treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. That's what they're talking about. And because people do not understand the thematic aspects of the Constitution, they want to bring this other stuff in here. None of it is real. This is nonsense. That is about blood. How can you be assured that a person born outside of the country, because his parents are loyal, but he's born under another flag, that flag will not have an influence where this person is born? And he comes here 14 years later, and he has that background. I mean, Obama was born, okay, well, let's forget where he was born. He was raised up to the age of 10 in Indonesia. Did you see the loyalty in Obama when Obama was in the White House? Did you see that, John? You think Obama was loyal to the United States? What evidence do you have of that?
I don't. I mean, he always said the reason
You're
why
an enemy combatant in the White House.
He had criticisms of the United States. He always said because I want to see it perfected. Well, okay, that's questionable. When the fact that you always backed countries and actually seem to show a great deal of fascination, appreciation, and respect for countries that are diametrically opposed to the principles of this country.
Yeah.
I'll just say it that way. So I mean, another thing is too, he was born. I mean, there's no evidence, in my opinion, where he really did like the United States. I mean, he always went around apologizing and trying to make Americans feel bad for what's something that was done in generations. Like, you could, even if you felt horrible about it, you can't undo it. You can't undo it.
This man will go down in history when we get away from all of the proximity to the event. You know, in order to get to examine a building, even a small building, you have to stand back from it in order to see the height of the building. You can't see it standing up nose to nose where the building itself is. You have to stand back from it. And when we get back from this presence of Obama at a distance, we're going to see this man was an enemy combatant in the White House. I don't care who doesn't like me saying it. I said it, and there's nobody qualified to say otherwise. You come with that noise, and you're going to be in for a fight. I don't mean a physical fight. Okay, to wrap this up. Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that we had a new experiment in town, a new world order. And when the left gets into power, they're not talking about everybody sharing power. The left wants power to exclusion of other parts of the political order, and they do not, in fact, intend to share it. That's what this thing is about with Donald Trump. We'll talk about this more next week. And I'm going to continue to talk about it, and I won't quit until they quit. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.